We'll talk about 5 contradictions briefly. Contradiction number 1. Conventional schooling is all about measuring and rewarding individual achievement. Well, that's fine. There's a place for that. Except that innovation is a team sport. There is no innovation without deep collaboration. Knowing this, these teachers of creative problem solving created courses that demanded teamwork, where students were accountable to their team, and they did 360 reviews of their team's contributions. They also, of course, assessed individual work. And interestingly, these teachers team taught whenever possible, because it turns out one reason we have so little innovation in education is because we are so profoundly isolated as a profession, working alone all day, every day. It becomes increasingly clear that isolation is not only the enemy of improvement, it's also the enemy of innovation. The second contradiction is all about the ways in which conventional schooling compartmentalizes knowledge according to schemes that are, again, about a century old, the Carnegie unit to be specific, and favors specialization. Well, again, there's a role for that, but the problem is innovations happen at the boundaries of academic disciplines, never within just one discipline. Knowing this, these teachers of creative problem solving created interdisciplinary courses organized around a big question or a problem that could not be understood, let alone solved, without the use of multiple disciplines. Contradiction number 3 is about the culture of the classroom. All too often, particularly in high schools and far too many colleges, the culture of classrooms is a culture of passivity. It's a culture of consumption, where students are consuming information. Maybe that's where they learn to be such good consumers. And it's a culture, ultimately, of infantilization. Because, in fact, too often, there's only one person in the room doing all the talking who's supposed to know everything. The culture of classrooms where you learn to be a creative problem solver is radically different. It's a culture that emphasizes creating over consuming. It's a culture that emphasizes doing, experimenting with trial and error. It's a culture that values knowledge, but assumes you acquire the most useful knowledge just in time in the context of solving a problem or answering a question. It's a culture where the teacher sees his or her role as much more than a facilitator, rather a performance coach, coaching students to higher levels of performance, much like a coach does on the athletic field or a director does in a theater. Contradictions 4 and 5, I think, are the most challenging of all. Contradiction 4, you see, is all about the F word in schools. That bad thing called failure. The thing that we all want to avoid the most, the thing that stigmatizes us. Fear of failure, I think, is so pervasive. It creates not just a culture of compliance, but a culture of risk avoidance. And it's as much for the teachers as it is for the kids. Teachers, too, are worried about being graded by their peers, by their kids, by their parents, by their supervisor. And so they, too, become risk averse. But here's the problem. Learning, I believe, and innovation demand that you take risks, that you make mistakes, and that you fail. I went to IDEO, the most innovative design company in the world. Their company motto is fail early and fail often. Other companies talking about fail fast, fail forward, fail cheap, but fail. Now, they don't mean fail in the academic sense, I discovered. What they're talking about is the heart of the process of innovation is, in fact, iteration. My new favorite word, iteration. Trying something out, seeing what worked, what didn't, revising and trying again. Going from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. It's called rapid prototyping in the world of innovation. And in fact, I think that's really how we adults learn some of the most important things. How many of you have learned more from your mistakes than your successes? Raise your hands. Yeah, we all have. But we don't allow kids to learn from mistakes. We penalize them. You know, you think about it for a moment. How did we learn to talk? or to walk? What if somebody had said to us, I'm sorry, you can't walk until you're able to walk in a straight line, none of this crawling stuff. And you can't talk unless you can talk in complete and grammatically correct sentences. And we're definitely not going to allow bicycle riding because we know you're going to fall and skin your knee. Learning, real learning, is a process of trial and error, where the error is not considered failure, but inherently a part of the learning process. Now, the way the teachers in these creative classrooms, incorporated that idea is they assess students on a body of work, never on an individual paper. They were looking for evidence of progress over time, evidence of mastery. You know, really, the only 3 grades I can justify, the only 3 grades I've used in recent years, are A, B, or incomplete. A B is my performance standard that I expect of every single student. One may need to vary the amount of time students need or the amount of support they need to reach that standard, but that standard remains constant. I mean, raise your hands if you'd like to fly with a C- airline pilot. Raise your hands. No, that is not what we want or expect in the adult world. We expect competence. And a person's work is considered incomplete until they're competent, not fail. Now, I think an A should be reserved for real human excellence, which is rare, as we know. So I think one of the critical issues for us as educators is how do we get the F out of the classroom and understand that all learning is a process of iteration and learning through trial and error. But let me get to the last contradiction, because I think it's equally important. You know, we rely heavily on extrinsic incentives to motivate learning. And motivation is one of those skeletons in the closet of education that we rarely talk about. How do we motivate kids to do their best? Well, not through fear and bribes, it turns out. You know, all of these young people whom I interviewed told me they did their best work in school, not for the grades, but because it was work worth doing. It was intrinsically interesting work. And when they are now out in working with employers, working in the world of work, they don't seek jobs that are the highest paying. They seek jobs where they can make a real difference.